My wife's credit card bills arrived a week ago. Why didn't you pay them? My son demanded this of me a month after I stopped giving them money. And make sure you come visit her on Saturday with cash. As always, take the opportunity to clean the whole house. My response made him disappear off the map for a few hours. But to understand how I arrived at that moment, I need to tell you who I am. My name is Eleanor Vance. I am 69 years old, and for entire decades, I lived as if my life did not belong to me. That call from Mason was not the first. It was merely one more in an endless list of demands that began so long ago I no longer remember when I stopped saying no. Maybe I never said it. Maybe I always believed it was my duty as a mother to accept everything they asked of me. That maternal love was measured by how much I could endure without breaking. Mason is my only child. I raised him alone after his father died when he was barely 12 years old. I worked 3 simultaneous jobs so he would lack nothing, so he could go to college, so he could have opportunities I never had. I cleaned other people's houses until my knees hurt so much I could barely walk. I cooked in diners where the heat of the kitchen left me dizzy. I sold clothes door to door under the scorching sun. Everything for him. And when Mason got married, I thought I could finally rest. That my work was done. That now he would build his own life and I could, for the first time in decades, breathe. I was wrong. 2 months after the wedding, Mason appeared at my house with a serious expression. He told me he needed my help, that things were tough, that his wife had lost her job and they had accumulated debt, that they needed me to lend them money. Just for a few months, just until she found work again. I gave him the money. It was everything I had saved to fix the roof of my house, which leaked every time it rained. But he was my son, and a mother does not let her son go without. Months passed. She never found a job, or maybe she did find one, and simply decided it was more comfortable for me to pay their bills. The requests multiplied. First, it was the electric and water bills for their house, then the groceries, then the tuition for the children who were born shortly after, then the gas, then the medical co-pays, then everything. And at some point, without realizing it, I stopped being his mother and became his unpaid employee. Every Saturday, without fail, Mason would call me. Sometimes, he would even come directly to pick me up. He would tell me to go to his house, that the kids missed me, that they wanted to spend time with their grandmother. It sounded sweet. It sounded like love. But when I arrived, what awaited me was not a hug. It was a to-do list. Clean the whole house, wash the laundry accumulated from the entire week, cook lunch and leave meals prepped for several days, babysit the kids while Mason and his wife went out to handle important business that generally implied going to the movies or eating out at a steakhouse. And at the end of the day, when my legs barely held me up and my back screamed in pain, Mason would pat me on the shoulder and say, "Thanks, Mom. I don't know what we'd do without you." As if that compensated for everything. As if those words paid for the hours of labor. As if they erased the exhaustion. As if they made it all make sense. For years, I convinced myself that this was normal. That mothers make sacrifices. That true love expects nothing in return. That my happiness did not matter as much as theirs. My friends told me something was wrong. Barbara, my neighbor for 30 years, repeated it to me every time she saw me arrive exhausted on Saturday nights. "Eleanor, that's not right. He is taking advantage of you." I always responded the same way. "He's my son. He needs me." "You have needs too," she would tell me. "And no one is taking care of you." But I did not listen. Because accepting that she was right meant accepting that I had wasted entire years, that I had let myself be used, that my own son saw me as a resource and not as a person, and that hurt too much. So I kept going. I kept paying. I kept cleaning. I kept caretaking. I kept existing only to serve them. Until one day, something changed. It was a Saturday like any other. I arrived at Mason's house carrying bags of groceries I had bought with my Social Security check. I knocked on the door. No one answered. I waited 5 minutes. 10, 15. Finally, Mason's wife opened the door. Her hair was perfectly blown out, her nails freshly done, wearing new clothes. She looked at me as if I were a nuisance. "Oh, you're here. Good thing. I have to leave in half an hour and the house is a disaster." She did not say hello. She did not ask how I was. She did not invite me in with kindness. She only gave me orders. The kids haven't had breakfast yet. There is dirty laundry in the bathroom. The kitchen floor is sticky. And I need you to wash the curtains because we have company coming tomorrow. I nodded. As always. I went in. I left the bags in the kitchen. I began to work. She left without saying goodbye. I spent 8 hours cleaning that house. 8 hours straight. Without a break. Without food. At my 69 years. On my knees scrubbing floors. Stretching to clean windows. Carrying buckets of dirty water. When I finished, I sat on the sofa for a moment. Just a moment. To breathe. My hands were trembling. My back burned. My knees were swollen. And in that instant, looking at that spotless house that I had just cleaned, I asked myself, when was the last time someone cleaned mine? When was the last time someone worried if I had eaten? When was the last time someone asked me if I was tired? The answer was simple and devastating. Never. Mason arrived that night when I was about to leave. He saw me gathering my things and told me, almost without looking at me, "Mom, I need you to transfer money to me tomorrow." The monthly bills came in and were short. It was not a question. It was an order. And I, as always, said, "Yes, son." I returned to my house that night and looked at myself in the mirror. I did not recognize the woman I saw. I was hunched over, pale, with dark circles under my eyes. I looked like I was 90 years old instead of 69. What had happened to me? Where was the Eleanor who worked 3 jobs with energy? Where was the strong woman who raised a son alone? Where was I? I had lost myself somewhere along the way. I had erased myself so they could exist comfortably. And the worst of it was that they did not even notice. That night I could not sleep. The questions would not stop spinning in my head. And the next day, when I went to the bank to transfer the money Mason had asked for, something strange happened. The teller looked at me with concern. "Mrs. Vance, this is the 3rd large transfer you have made this month. Are you sure everything is okay?" It was the first time in years that someone asked me that question. And I did not know what to answer. Because no, nothing was okay. But I was not ready to admit it yet. I made the transfer, I returned home, and I tried to keep living as if nothing had changed. But something had changed. Something small, a tiny crack in the armor of resignation I had built over the years. And that crack, with time, would turn into a total rupture. The weeks that followed that bank transfer were strange. On the outside, everything seemed the same. I kept waking up at 6 in the morning. I kept cleaning my house before going to clean Mason's. I kept cooking for myself and putting away extra portions just in case he stopped by for food. I kept answering his every call with the same docility as always. But on the inside, something was moving. Something uncomfortable. Something I could not ignore no matter how hard I tried. I began to notice things I used to let slide. Small details that accumulated like drops of water in a glass that was about to overflow. One Tuesday afternoon, Mason called me. Not to ask how I was, not to invite me for coffee, just to ask me to go to his house to watch the kids because he and his wife had an important dinner. I went, as always. When I arrived, the kids were already asleep. The house was silent. Mason and his wife had already left. They left me there, in an empty house, watching children who did not even know I was present. I sat on the living room sofa. I looked around. Everything was spotless. Of course, because I had cleaned it 2 days before. The furniture was new, the television was enormous, there were expensive decorations on the walls. And then I asked myself, if they have money for all this, why do they need mine? That question haunted me all night. The next day, when I was organizing my own receipts and bills, I found something that made my blood run cold. In the last 6 months, I had transferred a total of $3,200 to Mason. $3,200. Money that came out of my Social Security. Money I should have used to fix my roof, which continued to leak. To buy the medications I needed and sometimes did not take because I could not afford them. To live with a minimum of dignity. And all that money had gone straight to a house full of luxuries. To a family that dined out while I ate rice with an egg because it was the only thing I could afford after paying them. I felt something in my chest. It was not sadness. It was something heavier, darker. It was rage. a silent rage that had been accumulating for years without me realizing it. But I still did nothing. I still said nothing. Because breaking the pattern of a lifetime is not easy. Because admitting that my own son was using me was too painful. So I stayed quiet. The Friday of that week, Mason appeared at my house without warning. He brought a bag of fast food and a casual smile. "Hi, Mom. I was passing by and thought I'd visit you." I was happy. For a moment, I thought maybe you finally came just to see me, to spend time with me, to be my son and not my boss. We sat down. We ate. We talked about unimportant things. He told me about work. I told him about the garden. It seemed like a normal conversation between mother and son until we finished eating. Mason leaned back on the sofa and said, like someone commenting on the weather, "Mom, I need you to do me a favor." My heart sank. "Tell me, son." "My wife's credit card is maxed out. The bills came in, and we need to pay at least the minimum so they don't cut off the service. Could you cover it this month?" He did not ask if I had money. He did not ask if I needed that money for something. He did not ask anything. He just assumed I would say yes, as always. And the worst part was that he was right. "How much is it?" I asked, with a small voice. $400. $400. Half of my monthly check." "Okay," I said. Mason smiled. He gave me a kiss on the forehead, and he left. That night, sitting on my bed, with the electric bill unpaid on the table and the bottle of blood pressure pills empty because I had not been able to buy them, something broke inside me. It was not a dramatic break. I did not cry. I did not scream. It was something deeper, more definitive. It was the exact moment I stopped believing this was love. The next day, I decided to do something I had never done before. I decided to seek information. I wanted to know if Mason really needed my money or if he was just using me. I called Barbara. She worked at a bank. I asked her if she could, to discreetly find out about Mason's financial situation. I did not want to invade his privacy, but I needed to know the truth. Barbara looked at me with that expression friends have when they know you are about to discover something that is going to hurt you. "Eleanor, are you sure you want to know?" "Yes," I answered, although I was not sure of anything. 2 days later, Barbara came to my house. She brought a folder with papers. She sat in front of me carefully, as if she were about to give me terminal news. "Eleanor, your son has a fixed salary of $4,500 a month. His wife works too. She earns $3,000. Together, they have an income of $7,500 monthly." I froze. "Also," Barbara continued, "they have 2 savings accounts, one with $15,000, another with $8,000. I could not breathe. "Are you sure?" It was the only thing I could say. "Completely sure." "Eleanor, your son does not need your money. He never needed it." The world stopped. For years, Mason had told me things were tough, that they barely made ends meet, that they needed my help to survive, and it was all a lie. All of it. He had been robbing me, not just money, time, energy, health, dignity. He had used me as if I were an ATM with legs, as if my only function in life was to serve him. Barbara took my hand. "I'm sorry, Eleanor. I'm sorry you had to find out like this." I did not answer. I could not. The words were stuck in my throat, along with years of humiliation that only now I was beginning to process. That night, I did not sleep. I sat in the living room, looking at the ceiling that leaked, thinking about all the sacrifices I had made, about all the times I stopped buying something for myself because Mason needed my money, about all the times I ate less to be able to give him more, about all the times I ignored my own health because I was too busy taking care of theirs. And it had all been unnecessary. It had all been manipulation. The next day, I did something I had never done. When Mason called to ask me to go watch the kids, I told him I couldn't, that I didn't feel well. "But Mom, we need you to come. We already have plans." "I'm sorry, Mason. Not today." There was an uncomfortable silence on the other end of the line. "Fine," he said finally, with a cold tone. "I guess we'll have to cancel." And he hung up. He did not call to ask how I was. He did not come to see me. He just got annoyed because he couldn't use me. That told me everything I needed to know. The following days were more of the same. Mason called me only when he needed something, never to hear about me. And every time I told him no, his tone became more distant, colder, as if I only was worth something when I was useful. It was then that I began to keep evidence. I didn't do it with a plan in mind. I did it because something in me knew I was going to need it. I saved every text message where Mason asked me for money, every bank transfer, every receipt, every call where he demanded I go clean or babysit, everything. I kept it in a folder I hid in the back of my closet, like an archive of my own exploitation. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I knew that someday, somehow, that truth would have to come to light. And when it did, Mason wouldn't be able to deny anything. 2 weeks passed since I started keeping the evidence. 2 weeks in which every call from Mason, every message, every demand, became one more piece of proof. And with every piece of evidence I filed, the reality became clearer and more painful. It wasn't just that Mason used me. It was that he had done it for years, with total premeditation, with full awareness of what he was doing. One Sunday morning, while organizing the document folder, I found something I had forgotten. A letter Mason had written to me 5 years ago, when he had just gotten married. I opened it with trembling hands. "Mom, thanks for everything you have done for me. I know you have sacrificed a lot so I could have a better life. Now that I have my own family, I want you to know that I am never going to leave you alone. I am going to take care of you like you took care of me. I promise you." I read that letter 3 times. Every word was like an open wound, because that promise was never kept. On the contrary, Mason had done exactly the opposite. He had turned me into his servant, into his source of extra income, into his convenient solution. I kept the letter along with the rest of the evidence. It was a painful reminder that once upon a time he had been different, or maybe he never was. Maybe he just said what I needed to hear to keep me available. That same afternoon, Mason appeared at my house. He didn't knock. He had a key. He entered as if it were his house and not mine. "Mom, I need to talk to you." I sat on the sofa. He remained standing, as if he were in a business meeting. "The kids start school in 2 weeks. We need to buy uniforms, school supplies, backpacks, everything. It's about $600 total. Can you cover half?" $300. Again. "Mason, I have expenses too. My check isn't enough for everything." It was the first time I said something like that to him, and his reaction was immediate. He frowned. He looked at me as if I had said something absurd. "Mom, they're your grandkids. Don't you want them to have what they need to study?" There it was. Emotional manipulation. Blackmail disguised as family love. "It's not that I don't want to, Mason. It's that I can't. My check is $800. I already gave you $400 this month. If I give you $300 more, what am I going to live on?" Mason sighed, as if I were a difficult child who didn't understand what was important. "Mom, you always find a way. Besides, what do you need so much money for? You live alone. You don't have many expenses. You don't have many expenses." As if my life cost nothing. As if eating, paying electricity, water, gas, medications weren't real expenses. "I need to fix the roof, Mason. When it rains, water leaks in, and I need to buy my medication. The doctor told me I can't stop taking it. The roof can wait. And generic meds are cheaper." No, I was left speechless. My own son was minimizing my health. He was telling me that his comfort was more important than my well-being. "I'll see what I can do," I said finally, just so he would leave. Mason smiled. He patted me on the shoulder. "I knew I could count on you. Mom, you're the best." And he left. I stayed sitting on that sofa for hours, looking at the water stain on the ceiling, feeling how the weight of years of exploitation crushed my chest. That night, I decided to do something radical. I decided to say no. When Mason called me 2 days later to confirm the transfer of the $300, I took a deep breath and said, "I'm not going to be able to give you that money, Mason." Silence. "What do you mean you're not going to be able to?" "I don't have it. I already explained. My check isn't enough." "Mom, we talked about this. They're your grandkids. I know, and I love them. But I can't keep giving you money I don't have." Another silence. This one longer, heavier. "I can't believe you're doing this to me," he said finally. His voice sounded hurt, betrayed. I'm not doing anything to you, Mason. I'm just telling you the truth. Fine. I understand. I guess we'll have to figure it out ourselves. Like always. Like always. As if he had ever figured it out himself. As if he hadn't lived off my money for years. He hung up without saying goodbye, and I stayed there, with the phone in my hand, feeling a strange mix of guilt and relief. The following days were absolute silence. Mason didn't call me. He didn't text me. He didn't appear at my house. It was as if I had ceased to exist the moment I stopped being useful, and that hurt me more than anything he could have said. But it also freed me, because it confirmed what I already knew but didn't want to accept. To Mason, I wasn't his mother. I was a resource, and when that resource stopped being available, he simply discarded me. A week later, his wife called me. It was the first time she contacted me directly in months. "Eleanor, I need to talk to you. Mason told me you aren't going to help with the kids' expenses. It's not that I don't want to, it's that I can't. I understand things are tough for you too, but we really need that money. The kids can't go to school without uniforms." Then she used the same manipulation manual as Mason. "And you two can't cover those expenses?" I asked, although I already knew the answer. We had a lot of expenses this month. We had to fix the car, and we needed to change the living room sofa because the other one was already very old. The car, the sofa. While I lived with a leaky roof and without medication, they were changing furniture. "I'm sorry," I said. "I can't help this time." "Well, I guess the kids are going to have to understand that their grandmother doesn't want to help them." Those words were like a punch to the stomach. She was using the children. She was manipulating me through them, making me feel as if I were the villain. "That's not fair," I said, with a trembling voice. "What's not fair is that you turn your back on them when they need you most." And she hung up. I sat on the kitchen floor and cried. I cried for lost years, for wasted love, for a relationship that was never what I believed it was. But I also cried because I knew this was just the beginning, that saying no once wasn't enough, that I was going to have to stand firm even if it tore me apart inside. Barbara came to visit me that afternoon. She found me with puffy eyes, sitting on the sofa, staring into the void. "What happened?" she asked. I told her everything. Every word, every manipulation, every emotional blackmail. She listened to me in silence, and when I finished, she said something that changed everything. "Eleanor, this is abuse. What Mason is doing to you is financial and emotional abuse, and you need to understand that as long as you keep allowing it, he is going to keep doing it. But he's my son, and you are his mother. Not his employee, not his bank, not his slave. Your life has value. Your health has value. And you have the right to say no." Those words resonated in me for days. I had the right to say no. I had the right to live my own life. I had the right to exist without being useful to someone else. It was then that I made the hardest decision of my life. I decided to cut the cycle, completely. No more money. No more cleaning. No more watching kids whenever it suited them. No more living to serve. I knew it was going to hurt. I knew Mason was going to react badly. I knew I was probably going to lose the relationship with my grandkids. But I also knew that if I didn't do it now, I was going to die being invisible, being a shadow, being nothing. And I deserved more than that. So I prepared everything. I gathered all the evidence I had kept. I organized my finances so I could sustain myself without depending on anyone. I spoke with my doctor to ensure I had enough medication. And I waited. Because I knew Mason was going to come back. He always did. And when he returned, this time, he was going to encounter a different woman. A woman who was no longer afraid to say no. The silence between Mason and me lasted exactly 3 weeks. 3 weeks in which I didn't receive a single call. Not a text, not a visit. As if I had died. And in a certain way, for them, I had. The useful Eleanor had died. And the new Eleanor, the one who said no, simply didn't exist in their world. During those weeks, something strange began to happen. I started to feel like I could breathe. Mornings were no longer a countdown to the next demand. Saturdays no longer meant 8 hours cleaning someone else's house. My check, for the first time in years, was enough for me. I bought my full prescription. I fixed a leak in the roof. I bought myself a pair of new shoes, because mine had holes in the soles. Small things. Basic things. Things I should have been able to do always. Barbara noticed the change. You look better, Eleanor. More rested. I feel better, I admitted. Although I also feel guilty. Why? Because I feel like I should be suffering more. That I should miss taking care of my grandkids. That I should feel like I did something bad. And you don't feel it, sometimes. But mostly I feel relief. And that makes me feel like I'm a bad mother. Barbara took my hands. Eleanor, feeling relief doesn't make you a bad mother. It makes you human. For years they exploited you. It's normal that you feel relieved that it's over. I wanted to believe her. I really wanted to. But guilt is a slow poison. And I had spent entire decades learning that my value depended on how much I gave to others, unlearning that wasn't going to be easy. The fourth week of silence was about to end when I received a call. It wasn't from Mason. It was from Linda, my sister-in-law, Mason's wife's sister. Eleanor, I need to talk to you about something important. Her tone was serious, formal. Tell me, Linda. Mason and my sister told me you stopped helping them financially, that you don't want to watch your grandkids anymore, that you turned your back on them. There it was, the manipulated version of the story. I was the villain. They were the victims. That isn't exactly what happened, I said, keeping calm. Then what happened? I took a deep breath, and for the first time, I said the complete truth out loud. What happened is that for years I gave them money I didn't have, that I cleaned their house every week without them asking me with respect, that I watched their children as if it were my obligation and not a favor. And when I couldn't do it anymore, when I had nothing left to give, they disappeared. They didn't call me to see how I was, only to complain that I stopped serving them. There was a long silence on the other end. I understand, Linda said finally. But they are also going through a hard time. They have expenses, responsibilities. Me too, Linda. I have expenses too. I also have responsibilities. And the main one is taking care of myself because no one else is going to do it. But they're family, Eleanor. Family helps each other. Exactly. Family helps each other. They don't use each other. And for years I was used, not helped. Linda didn't know how to respond. She muttered something about understanding my point and hung up. But I knew that conversation hadn't ended. I knew Mason was building a narrative, painting me as the selfish mother who abandoned her family. And 2 days later, my suspicions were confirmed. My sister, Patricia, who lives in another city, called me, worried. Eleanor, what is going on with Mason? He wrote to me saying you are sick, that you are behaving strangely, that he is worried about you. I felt my blood boil. I'm not sick, Patricia. I am perfectly fine. Then why does he say that? Because he wants the family to think I'm losing my mind. Because it's easier to say I'm crazy than to admit I got tired of them exploiting me. I told her everything. Every detail, every lie, every manipulation. Patricia listened in silence. And at the end, she said, I always suspected something wasn't right, but I thought it was your decision to help them. I didn't know they were forcing you. No one forced me with a gun, Patricia, but they forced me with guilt, with emotional blackmail, and that is just as effective. What are you going to do? I already did it. I stopped giving them money. I stopped cleaning their house. I stopped living for them. And how do you feel? That question took me by surprise, because no one had asked me. I feel free, I said, and terrified, because I don't know what's going to happen now. What's going to happen is that you are going to live your life, Eleanor. Finally, we hung up, and I stayed thinking about those words. Live my life. How much time had passed since the last time I did something just because I wanted to? When was the last time I made a decision thinking about me and not about Mason? I didn't remember. That night, I opened the folder where I kept all the evidence. Messages, transfers, receipts, years of exploitation documented meticulously. And I found something I had forgotten. An email Mason had sent to his wife 2 years ago. I had found it by accident when he asked me to check his computer because it wasn't working well. In that email, Mason wrote, Don't worry about the money. My mom always helps us. She has her Social Security and doesn't spend much. We can count on her for the extra expenses. It's easier to ask her than to budget ourselves. I read that email over and over again. It's easier to ask her than to budget ourselves. There it was, The definitive proof. Mason knew exactly what he was doing. It wasn't ignorance. It wasn't necessity. It was pure convenience. I was his plan B, his easy solution, his emotional ATM. I printed that email. I kept it with everything else, because I knew someday I was going to need it. The following days were quiet, too quiet, like the calm before the storm. And the storm arrived on a Saturday morning. Someone knocked on the door insistently. I opened it. It was Mason. But he wasn't alone. He brought his 2 children. My grandkids. Mom, the kids wanted to see you. They said they missed their grandma. The kids hugged me. They were smiling. They were innocent in all this. Hi, my loves, I said, hugging them back. Mason entered without asking permission. Can we talk for a moment? I knew what was coming, but I nodded. The kids stayed watching TV while Mason and I sat in the kitchen. Mom, I know things have been tense between us, and I want to fix it. You're my mother. I love you. I don't want us to be fighting. He sounded sincere. He almost convinced me. Almost. I want to fix things too, Mason. But I need you to understand something. I can't keep living like I lived. I can't keep giving you money I don't have. I can't keep being your maid. His expression changed. The mask of a loving son fell for a second. No one asked you to be my maid, Mom. You offered to help. I just accepted. I offered because I knew if I didn't, you would make me feel guilty. You manipulated me into saying yes. That's ridiculous. No one manipulated you. You were always free to say no. Really? And what happened when I said no 3 weeks ago? You disappeared. You didn't call me. You erased me from your life. Until you needed something again. Mason clenched his jaw. I came here to make peace, not for you to accuse me of things I didn't do. I'm not accusing you of anything that isn't true. He stood up. His face was red with anger. You know what, Mom? You've changed. I don't know what happened to you, but you aren't the same. And frankly, you worry me. Maybe you should see a doctor. There it was again. The tactic of making me look like I was crazy. I am perfectly fine, Mason. For the first time in years, I am fine. It doesn't look like it. You seem resentful. Bitter. I am tired. Of being used. Of being invisible. Of existing only to serve. Mason looked at me with contempt. How dramatic you've become. He called the kids. He took them by the hands. And before leaving, he said, when you are ready to be my mother again, and not this selfish version of yourself, let me know. And he left. I closed the door. I leaned against it, and I cried. But I didn't cry from sadness. I cried from rage, from indignation, from years of silence finally coming out, because I had just realized something fundamental. Mason was never going to change. He was never going to acknowledge what he did. He was never going to apologize. And I had to accept that. I had to accept that my son wasn't who I thought he was, that maybe he never was, and I had to decide if I was going to keep fighting for a relationship that only existed when I was useful, or if I was going to choose myself for the first time in my life. That night, I made the definitive decision. I was going to choose me. The days after that visit from Mason were different. Something had changed in me irreversibly. It wasn't just anger or exhaustion anymore. It was clarity, a cold and cutting clarity that showed me the truth without filters or excuses. For years, I had lived in a fog of justifications. Every time Mason used me, I found a reason to allow it. He's my son. The kids need me. Family helps each other. I'm his mother. It's my duty. But now, with that new clarity, I saw those phrases for what they really were. Chains. Chains I had accepted wearing myself because they taught me that maternal love meant absolute sacrifice, that a good mother erases herself so her children can shine. Lie. A good mother also has the right to exist, to breathe, to live. I began to do things I had never done, small things, but significant. I got up one Tuesday at 9 in the morning, not at 6, at 9, because I could, because no one expected me anywhere, because my time was mine. I ate breakfast slowly. I drank coffee looking out the window, without rushing, without guilt. I called a friend I hadn't seen in months because I was always too busy cleaning Mason's house. We went for a walk in the park. We talked about unimportant things. We laughed, and I realized something devastating. I had forgotten what it felt like to laugh. That afternoon, as I returned home, I passed a beauty salon. I stopped. I looked at my reflection in the glass. My hair was neglected, gray, shapeless. It had been years since I went to a hairdresser because that money always ended up in Mason's account. I went in. "I want a cut," I told the stylist. "Something different. Something that makes me feel new." She smiled. And for the next hour, she worked on my hair while I closed my eyes and tried not to cry. When she finished, I looked in the mirror. I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. She looked dignified. She looked like someone who matters. "You look beautiful," the stylist said. "Thank you," I whispered. I paid with my own money I didn't have to transfer to anyone. And I walked out of there feeling lighter than I had in years. But peace never lasts long when someone is used to controlling you. 2 days later, I received a call. Not from Mason. From his wife. "Eleanor, we need to talk." Her tone was cold, cutting. "Tell me." "Mason told me you disrespected him the last time he came to see you. That you accused him of horrible things. That you treated him badly in front of his own children." I took a deep breath. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me. I didn't disrespect anyone. I only told him the truth. That I can't keep giving you money I don't have. "That is very convenient for you, isn't it? Now that you decided to be selfish, everyone else has to suffer the consequences." "I am not being selfish. I am being realistic. My Social Security check is $800 a month. Do you know how much I have given you too in the last year? More than $10,000. Money I needed to live, to take care of my health, to fix my house. No one forced you to give us anything." Those words hit me like a fist in the stomach. "You're right," I said, with a trembling voice. "No one forced me. I gave it because I believed it was my duty, because you made me believe that without my help you couldn't survive. But now I know the truth." "What truth?" "That Mason earns $4,500 a month, that you earn $3,000, that you have savings, that you never really needed me. It was just more comfortable to use my money than to use yours." There was an icy silence. "Who told you that?" "It doesn't matter who told me. The important thing is that it is true, and you know it." "You are misinformed, Eleanor. Our finances are not your business." "You're right. They aren't my business. Just as your credit card debts are not my business either. Nor the kids' uniforms. Nor the new sofa you bought last month while I lived with a leaking roof. I can't believe how bitter you have become." "I am not bitter. I am awake. And it took me 69 years to wake up, but I finally did." She hung up without saying more. I stayed sitting with the phone in my hand, feeling my heart beating strongly in my chest. "I didn't regret anything," I said. "But it hurt. It hurt to know that for them, I was only worth something when I was silent and obedient." That night, I opened the folder of evidence again, and I began to organize them more systematically. I made a list of all the bank transfers I had made to Mason in the last 2 years. The total was terrifying. $12,300. $12,300 that came out of my pension. I calculated how much of that money I could have used for myself. I could have completely fixed my house. I could have had all the medical checkups I needed. I could have saved for my future, but instead, I financed the comfort of a family that had more income than I did. I kept that list along with the bank statements, along with Mason's messages demanding money, along with the email where he admitted it was easier to ask me than to budget themselves. Each piece of evidence was like a piece of a puzzle, and when they were all together, they formed a clear and devastating image of systematic exploitation. I didn't know when I was going to use that evidence, but I knew the moment would arrive. A week later, Barbara came to visit me. She wore a worried expression. "Eleanor, I heard something I need to tell you." "What happened?" "Mason is telling everyone in the neighborhood that you are sick, that you have mental problems, that you are behaving irrationally." I felt my blood boil. Of course he is saying that. It's easier to make me look crazy than to admit he is an abuser. People believe him. "Eleanor, some neighbors asked me if it was true, if you needed help, and what did you tell them?" "I told them the truth, that you are perfectly fine, that the only thing you did was set boundaries, but not everyone believed me." I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. Mason was executing his plan. Destroy my reputation so that when I told my version of the story, no one would believe me. It was brilliant, and it was cruel. "What are you going to do?" Barbara asked. "I am going to keep living my life. And when he returns, when he asks me for something again because I know he will do it, I am going to be ready." Ready for what? To show him that I am no longer the woman he can manipulate, that now I am someone who knows her worth, and that I have proof of everything he has done. Barbara looked at me with a mix of pride and worry. "Be careful, Eleanor. People like Mason don't react well when they lose control." "I know, but I can no longer keep living with fear. If I am going to fall, I am going to fall standing up, with the truth in my hand." The following days were strangely peaceful. Mason didn't call. He didn't write. He didn't appear. It was like he was waiting, calculating his next move. And I waited too. I used that time to take care of myself, to reconnect with friends I had abandoned for being always available to Mason, to do things that made me happy. I started walking every morning. My doctor had recommended exercise years ago, but I never had time. Now I had it. I signed up for a knitting group that met on Thursdays at the neighborhood library. I met other women my age, women who had also lived lives of sacrifice, women who were also learning to exist for themselves. One of them, Susan, told me her story. It was almost identical to mine. A son who used her, who exploited her, who disappeared when she set boundaries. "Do you regret it?" I asked her. "Every day," she admitted. "But I don't regret saying no. I regret not doing it sooner, wasting so many years being invisible." Her words resonated in me for days. "I don't regret saying no. I regret not doing it sooner." Exactly. A full month passed since the last time I saw Mason. A month of silence. A month of peace. And then, the call came. It wasn't Mason. It was an unknown number. "Eleanor Vance?" "Yes, this is she. This is General Hospital calling. Your son Mason was admitted this morning. You are listed as the emergency contact. We need you to come." The world stopped. "What happened? Is he okay?" "We cannot give details over the phone. Please, come to the hospital as soon as possible." They hung up. I stood paralyzed. 1,000 thoughts passed through my head in seconds. What if it was serious? What if he was dying? What if this was my last chance to see him? I grabbed my purse. I ran out towards the hospital. And on the way, a part of me whispered, "This is also manipulation." But I couldn't ignore the call. He was my son. And as much as he had hurt me, he was still my son. I arrived at the hospital with my heart beating 1,000 miles an hour. I went to the front desk. I gave Mason's name. The receptionist checked the system. "Mason Vance was discharged 20 minutes ago." "What?" "It was a fainting spell due to low blood pressure. Nothing serious. He already went home." I stood there, feeling rage run through my body. It was a trap to see if I was still available, if I still ran when he needed something. And I had fallen for it. I walked out of the hospital shaking, not from fear, from fury, because I had just confirmed what I already knew. Mason was never going to change, and I had to make a definitive decision. I walked back from the hospital. I didn't take the bus. I needed the cold air hitting my face. I needed time to process what had just happened. Mason had used my mother's love as bait. He knew the word hospital would make me run without thinking, that I would forget all the pain, all the exploitation, all the abuse, the moment I thought he was in danger, and he was right. But this time, instead of feeling guilty for having fallen into the trap, I felt something different. I felt determination, because now I knew how far Mason was willing to go to keep me under control. And that gave me the strength I needed to do what I had been postponing for weeks: cut the tie, completely. When I got home, I sat at the kitchen table and took out a blank sheet of paper. I wrote a list of everything I needed to do to rebuild my life without Mason in it. First, change my phone number. Second, block all contact on social media. Third, warn the neighbors not to give out information about me. Fourth, talk to my bank to ensure no one else could access my accounts. Fifth, organize all the evidence in case I needed to use it legally. I looked at that list for a long time. Every point was a step towards freedom, but it was also a step towards loneliness. Because cutting off Mason meant probably losing my grandkids too. That hurt more than everything else. But I knew if I didn't do it now, I never would. And I would spend the rest of my days being a shadow, existing only to serve, dying slowly while pretending to be alive. The next day, I began to execute the list. I went to the phone company and changed my number. The employee asked if I was sure, because I would lose all my contacts. I told her yes, that I was completely sure. I only gave the new number to 3 people: Barbara, Patricia, and my doctor. Then I went to the bank. I explained to the manager that I needed to make sure only I had access to my accounts, that no one else could make moves or inquiries. He looked at me with understanding, as if he had seen similar cases before. I understand perfectly, Mrs. Vance. I am going to update all the security information. From now on, only you will be able to access your funds. I signed the necessary documents, and when I left the bank, I felt something similar to relief. My resources were mine. Finally, that night, I sat on the sofa with a cup of tea and checked social media for the last time before blocking everything. I saw photos of Mason with his family, smiling, looking happy, as if nothing had happened. In none of those photos did I appear. It was as if I had never existed in their lives, as if all these years of sacrifice had been erased from their memory. I closed the app. I blocked his profile. I blocked his wife's profile, and I turned off the phone. The following days were strange. Quiet, but strange. I didn't receive calls demanding money. I didn't receive messages asking me to go clean. I didn't receive reproaches disguised as concern, only silence. And in that silence, I began to rebuild myself. I went back to doing things I had forgotten. I cooked recipes I liked, not the ones Mason liked. I read books I had bought years ago and never had time to open. I painted the walls of my bedroom a soft color that brought me peace. Barbara came to visit me often. She brought me news from the neighborhood, news that included Mason. He is telling everyone that you disappeared, that you don't answer his calls, that he is worried about you. Let him say what he wants, I replied. I no longer care what people think. Are you sure about that? No, I admitted. It still hurts. I still care. But I am learning to live with that pain, because the pain of continuing to be exploited is worse. One afternoon, while I was watering the plants in the garden, I saw a car stop in front of my house. It was Mason. My heart accelerated. I wasn't ready for this moment, but I knew it had to come. Mason got out of the car. He looked tired, angry. He walked toward me with firm steps. Mom, what the hell is going on? You changed your number. You blocked everyone on social media. You disappeared. I didn't disappear, Mason. I just stepped away. Why? What did I do to deserve this? That question would have destroyed me a month ago. It would have made me doubt. It would have made me feel guilty. But now, no. What did you do? I repeated, with a calm voice. You used me for years. You stole my money. You treated me like an employee. You manipulated me emotionally. You erased me as a person. I never stole anything from you. You gave me that money. I gave it to you because you made me feel I had no choice, because you manipulated me with guilt, because you taught me that being a good mother meant disappearing completely. You are exaggerating everything. You were always dramatic. No, Mason. I was always convenient. And when I stopped being so, I disappeared for you. He clenched his jaw. I could see the rage growing in his eyes. You know what? You're right. You were convenient, because you were always there. You always said yes. You always gave everything without asking for anything in return. And now what? Now you regret it? Now you want me to thank you for doing what mothers are supposed to do? Those words should have destroyed me. But instead, they freed me. Because finally, Mason had shown his true face. He had admitted he saw me as a resource, that my love was something he deserved without having to give anything back. Mothers don't have to disappear so their children can exist, Mason, and I am not going to do it anymore. So I guess this is goodbye. I guess so. Mason looked at me with contempt. He got into his car, and before leaving, he rolled down the window and yelled, "Don't come crying when you are alone and sick, because I won't be there." He started the car and left. I stood in the garden, with the hose still in my hand, watching the car disappear down the street. And then something unexpected happened. I smiled, because I had just realized something fundamental. I was already alone. I had been alone for years, surrounded by people, but completely alone. Because no one really saw me. No one took care of me. No one asked how I was. The only difference now was that I no longer pretended I wasn't alone. And that honesty, however painful it was liberating. That night, I slept better than I had slept in years. Because finally, for the first time in decades, I was living my own life. The weeks that followed that last encounter with Mason were the strangest of my life. Not because they were hard, although sometimes they were, but because they were mine. For the first time in decades, no one dictated how I should use my time. No one told me where I had to be on Saturdays. No one called me at 7 a.m. to remind me of a list of tasks that weren't mine. The silence was absolute. And at first, that silence terrified me. I had lived so long functioning for the needs of others that I didn't know what to do with myself when those needs disappeared. I woke up in the mornings and asked myself, and now what? But little by little, that silence stopped scaring me. It became a space where I could breathe, where I could think, where I could exist without asking permission. I began to fill that space with small but significant things. I signed up for a painting workshop at the community center. I had never painted in my life, but I always wanted to try. The first day I went with trembling hands, feeling I didn't belong there, that I was too old, that it was ridiculous to start something new at 69. But the instructor, a woman named Beverly, welcomed me with a warm smile. "It is never too late to create something beautiful," she told me. And she was right. The first weeks, my paintings were disasters. Uneven colors, shapes without meaning. But I didn't care. Because for the first time in my life, I was doing something just because I wanted to. Not because someone asked me to. Not because it was my obligation. Just because it made me happy. I also began to take care of my health for real. I went to the doctor for all the checkups I had been postponing for years because I had no money left after giving everything to Mason. The doctor reviewed my results with concern. "Mrs. Vance, your blood pressure is very high. Your cholesterol levels too. And you have the beginnings of osteoporosis. Have you been taking your medications regularly?" "Not always," I admitted. "Sometimes I didn't have money to buy them." "You need to take them every day, without fail. And you need to exercise. Walk at least 30 minutes daily." I nodded. And for the first time, I really committed to taking care of myself. I started walking every morning in the park. At first, I could only do 10 minutes before my knees protested. But with time, I got to 30, then to 45. And while I walked, I thought. I thought about everything I had lost, but also about everything I was gaining. I was gaining time. I was gaining peace. I was gaining my life back. One morning, while walking, I ran into Susan from the knitting group. She was walking too. "Can I join you?" she asked. Of course. We walked in silence for a few minutes, and then she said, "My son came to see me yesterday." "Really? And how was it?" "Horrible. He came to ask me for money again. I told him no, and he told me I was a selfish mother, that I had abandoned him." "I'm so sorry, Susan." "Don't be sorry. Because this time, when he left, I didn't cry. I didn't feel guilty. I just felt relief for having stood firm." Her words resonated deeply in me. "Me too," I said. "I also feel relief. Do you think they'll ever come back?" "I don't know. And honestly, I don't know if I want them to come back. Because I know if they come back, it will be because they need something, not because they miss me." Susan nodded with sadness. "It is hard to accept that your own children see you as a resource and not as a person." "Yes, but it is harder to keep pretending it isn't so." We kept walking. Two older women who had spent decades being invisible, learning finally to exist. Months passed. 3, 4, 5. I heard nothing from Mason. Nothing at all. At first, I checked my phone expecting some message, some call, something that told me I still mattered to him, even a little. But nothing ever came. And eventually, I stopped checking. My life filled up with other things, with friends who really cared about me, with activities that gave me purpose, with small but beautiful moments that reminded me I was still alive. Patricia, my sister, came to visit me every 2 weeks. We cooked together. We talked about life, about our mistakes, about our regrets. "Do you miss Mason?" she asked me one day. "I miss the son I thought I had," I answered. "But that son never really existed. It was an illusion I built myself because I needed to believe all my sacrifice was worth it." And was it worth it? That question hurt me, because the honest answer was no. "It wasn't worth sacrificing myself until I disappeared," I said finally. "But it was worth learning the lesson, even though it took me 69 years to learn it." Patricia hugged me. "I am proud of you, Eleanor. I know what you are doing isn't easy." "It isn't, but it is necessary." One Saturday afternoon, while painting in my workshop, I received a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering, but finally, I did. "Eleanor Vance?" "Yes, it's me. This is Linda, Mason's sister-in-law. I need to talk to you." My heart accelerated. "What happened?" "Mason is in trouble. Serious financial trouble. He has debts he can't pay. His wife left him. She took the kids. He is alone and doesn't know what to do." Silence. She waited for my reaction. She expected me to say I would run to save him, as always. But I didn't. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said finally. "I hope he can resolve it." "Eleanor, he needs your help. You are his mother." Being his mother doesn't mean I have to destroy myself to save him from the consequences of his own decisions. "But he's your son." "Exactly. He is my son, not my owner, not my eternal responsibility. And I am not going to sacrifice my well-being for his anymore." "I can't believe how cold you have become." "I am not cold, Linda. I am a survivor, and I survived because I learned to choose myself." I hung up. My hands were trembling. My heart was beating strongly, because I had just faced my greatest fear. Mason needed real help, and I had said no. And the world didn't collapse. I didn't collapse. I just kept existing. I just kept breathing. And I realized something fundamental. Saying no didn't make me a bad mother. It made me a person with boundaries, with dignity, with the right to live. That night, I took out the folder with all the evidence I had kept for months. All the transfers, all the messages, all the emails. I reviewed them one by one, and I asked myself, what did I keep them for? To use them against Mason? To humiliate him? To get revenge? No. I kept them to remind myself of the truth, to have evidence that I wasn't crazy, that the abuse was real, that I didn't exaggerate or invent anything. I kept them to validate my own pain, and now that I had done it, I didn't need them anymore. I took all that evidence, all those documents representing years of exploitation, and I burned them. I watched the fire consume every paper, every message, every receipt, and with every flame, I felt something release inside me. It wasn't forgiveness. I still couldn't forgive. It was liberation. It was letting go of the weight of rage. It was stopping carrying the need to prove my suffering, because I knew what I had lived, and that was enough. I didn't need anyone else to validate it. I sat in front of the fire until everything turned to ash. And then I breathed. I breathed deeply, like I hadn't breathed in years, because finally, truly, I was free. The following months were about rebuilding, not the dramatic kind seen in movies. There were no grand revelations or epic moments of transformation. It was something more subtle, deeper. It was the slow and painful process of learning to live for myself after living for others for a lifetime. I began to do things that seemed insignificant, but for me were revolutionary. I got up when my body asked me to, not when the clock demanded it. I ate what I wanted to eat, not what was left over or cheapest. I spent money on things that made me happy without feeling guilt for every penny. I bought books, lots of books. I stacked them by my bed and read them late into the night, without anyone telling me to turn off the light, without anyone demanding I wake up early the next day to clean their house. I signed up for yoga classes for seniors. At first, I could barely touch my knees without everything hurting. But the instructor was patient. It's not about being perfect, Eleanor. It's about being present in your own body. Being present in my own body. What a strange concept. I had spent so many years ignoring pain, fatigue, illness, that I had forgotten what it really felt like to listen to what my body needed. Little by little, the poses became easier. My back hurt less. I slept better. And with every class, I felt I was recovering a piece of myself I had lost decades ago. I also strengthened friendships I had neglected by always being available for Mason. Barbara became my confidant. We met twice a week to drink coffee and talk about life. "You look different," she told me one day. "Lighter. I feel different. I feel as if I had been carrying rocks for years and finally let them go." And Mason? That question still hurt me, but it no longer destroyed me. I know nothing about him, and I am learning to live with that. Do you think he will come back someday? Probably. When he needs something. When things get really tough and he has no one else to turn to. But by then, I hope to be strong enough to stand firm. Barbara nodded with understanding. "And if he comes back, what will you tell him?" "The truth. That I love him because he is my son, but that I am no longer going to allow him to use me. That he can be in my life if he treats me with respect and dignity. But if he only looks for me when he needs something, then I prefer to be alone." 7 months had passed since the last time I saw Mason. 7 months of total silence. And in those 7 months, my life had changed completely. I fixed the roof of my house. Finally. No leaks. Without having to put buckets out every time it rained. I painted the walls colors I liked. A soft yellow in the kitchen. A light green in the living room. My house stopped being just a place where I slept and became a home. I planted flowers in the garden. Roses, daisies, sunflowers. I watered them every morning and talked to them. Barbara laughed at me when I told her, "Plants don't answer you, Eleanor. I don't need them to answer me. I just need something living to take care of without it exploiting me in return." She stopped laughing. She understood. My health improved notably. The doctor was impressed with my most recent blood tests. "Whatever you are doing, Mrs. Vance, keep doing it. Your pressure is controlled. Your cholesterol went down. You look 10 years younger." "I stopped living under constant stress," I told him. "Turns out that's good for your health." He smiled, as if he understood perfectly what I was talking about. One afternoon, while I was at the grocery store, I saw Mason's wife. She was with the kids, my grandkids. My heart stopped. The kids had grown. They were taller, bigger, and I had missed those months of their lives. She saw me. For a second, our gazes crossed. I waited for some reaction. I waited for her to approach, to say something, to at least acknowledge my existence. But she didn't. She simply looked away and kept walking with the kids, as if I were invisible. I stood in the middle of the aisle of the grocery store, feeling something break inside me. It wasn't pain. It was something closer to acceptance. Acceptance that they had really erased me from their lives. That for them, I only existed when I was useful. And now that I wasn't, it was as if I had never existed. I finished my shopping on autopilot. I returned home. I sat on the sofa, and I cried. Not because I missed them, although I did. I cried for the lost years, for the love I gave without measure to people who never appreciated it, for the grandmother I could no longer be. But I also cried from relief, because I had confirmed what I already knew. I did the right thing by walking away, because if I had stayed there, they would have consumed me completely. I would have died being a shadow, and my grandkids would have grown up seeing that as normal, seeing that older women exist only to serve. At least now, even though I couldn't be with them, I wasn't teaching them that abuse is love. That night, Patricia called me. "Eleanor, are you okay? You sound weird. I saw the kids today. At the store." "Oh no. What happened?" "Nothing. Absolutely nothing." And that was the worst part. I told her everything. She listened in silence. "I am so sorry, sister." "Me too. But I also know this is part of the process. I can't have Mason in my life without accepting the abuse. And if that means losing my grandkids, then that's how it has to be." "You are very brave." "I don't feel brave. I feel shattered. But I also know I am doing the right thing." 2 more weeks passed. And then I received a call from another unknown number. This time, it was Mason. "Mom, I need to talk to you." My heart beat strongly. I took a deep breath. "What do you need, Mason?" "I need us to meet. It's urgent." "What is this about?" I can't talk over the phone. I need to see you in person. Something in me wanted to say yes, wanted to run to him, wanted to believe he had finally understood, that he finally missed me. But another part of me, the part that had painfully learned the truth, knew better. Mason, if you need money, the answer is no. I am not calling for money. Mom, please, just give me a chance to talk to you. I hesitated. For long seconds, I hesitated. Okay, we can meet at the coffee shop downtown. Tomorrow at 3. Thanks, Mom. He hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand, wondering if I had just made a terrible mistake. But a part of me needed to know, needed to see if something had changed. If there was any possibility that Mason really wanted to reconnect with me as a person and not as a resource. I called Barbara. Mason wants to see me. And are you going? Yes. But this time I am going prepared. This time I am going knowing exactly who I am and what I deserve. And if he can't give me that, then I am going to leave. Forever. Be careful, Eleanor. People like Mason are very good at manipulating. I know. But I am no longer the same woman I was 7 months ago. I am no longer vulnerable. I am no longer desperate for his love. And that changes everything. The next day, I got ready carefully. I put on nice clothes. I put on makeup. Not because I wanted to impress Mason, but because I wanted to remind myself that I have worth. I arrived at the coffee shop 5 minutes before 3. I ordered a coffee. I sat by the window. And I waited. Mason arrived exactly at 3. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, thinner. He sat in front of me without saying anything for a moment, and then he began to speak. Mason sat in front of me, and for a long moment just looked at me, as if he were evaluating what to say, how to manipulate me this time. But I was no longer the same woman, and he was about to discover it. Mom, I know things between us have been complicated. Complicated, I repeated. That is an interesting way to describe years of exploitation. He blinked, surprised by my direct tone. I didn't exploit you, Mom. I just accepted your help when you offered it. No, Mason. You manipulated me into believing it was my obligation to give you everything. My money, my time, my entire life. I didn't come here to fight. Then what did you come for? He took a deep breath. And then he said something I didn't expect. My wife's credit card bills came in a week ago. Why didn't you pay them? There it was. The true motive for the call. A month had passed since I stopped giving them money, and now he came to claim it, as if it were my obligation. I stared at him in silence, waiting for him to continue. And make sure you visit her on Saturday with cash, as always. Take the opportunity to clean the whole house. It wasn't a request. It was an order. Spoken with the same casual tone used to ask for an insignificant favor. As if the last 7 months hadn't happened, as if I hadn't changed, as if he could still use the same old tactics. I felt something rise up my chest. It wasn't anger. It was something colder, more definitive. I took out my phone. I opened my banking app. I turned the screen toward him. See this, Mason? It is the balance of my account, $840. That is my full Social Security check for this month. I haven't paid the electric yet, nor the water, nor bought food. But I have $840. He looked at the screen without understanding where this was going. Now, I continued. Let me show you something else. I took a folded sheet out of my purse. I had prepared it the night before. It was a summary of all the transfers I had made to him during the last 2 years before burning it all. In the last 2 years, I transferred you $12,300. Money that came out of a pension of $800 monthly. Do you know what that means, Mason? It means I gave you more than a full year of my life. A whole year of food, medication, repairs to my house, everything I needed to live with dignity. I gave it to you. I didn't force you. Let me finish, I interrupted him. My voice was calm but firm. I also have here your bank statements. The ones I got months ago. The ones showing that you and your wife together earned $7,500 a month. That you have savings of over $20,000. That you never really needed me. His face turned pale. I also have screenshots of the email you sent your wife 2 years ago. The one that says verbatim, "It's easier to ask her than to budget ourselves." Do you remember it? Mason didn't answer. He just looked at me with a mix of shock and rage. So now I am going to answer your question. Why didn't I pay your wife's debts? Because they are not my responsibility. They never were. And I am no longer going to allow you to use me as an ATM with legs. Mom, I haven't finished. You said to come on Saturday to clean your house. With money, as always. But let me clarify something, Mason. I am not your employee. I am not your maid. I am not your bank. I am your mother. And as your mother, I deserved respect, love, and consideration, none of which I received from you. You were always dramatic, and you were always an abuser. An emotional and financial abuser who used his own mother until there was nothing left of her. Mason hit the table with his fist. Several people in the coffee shop turned to look at us. You know what? You're right. I used you because you were there, because you always said yes, because it was easy. And you know what else? Mom, I would do it again, because that is what mothers do. They sacrifice themselves for their children. Those words should have destroyed me, but instead, they freed me completely. Because finally, he had admitted the truth. Finally, he had shown his true face without masks, and that gave me the strength I needed to do what I came to do. I stood up. You are right about one thing, Mason. Mothers sacrifice for their children, but there is a difference between sacrifice and self-destruction. And I crossed that line years ago for you, but not anymore. So what? Are you going to abandon me? Your own grandkids? I am not abandoning you. I am choosing myself. And as for the grandkids, you were the one who used them as tools of manipulation. You were the one who erased me from their lives when I stopped being useful. So don't talk to me about abandonment when you abandoned your mother years ago. It just took you time to realize it because I was still there, bleeding in silence. Mason stood up too. You are going to regret this. When you are old and alone and sick, you are going to regret it. I am already old, Mason, and I have been alone for years even though I was surrounded by people. The only difference now is that I no longer pretend I'm not, and that makes me stronger, not weaker. I turned to leave, but before walking out of the coffee shop, I stopped and said one last thing. Oh, and Mason, about those credit card debts. Paying them is your responsibility and your wife's, not mine. Never was mine. And if you can't pay them with $7,500 of monthly income and $20,000 in savings, then the problem isn't a lack of money. It is a lack of responsibility. I walked out of the coffee shop. The cold air hit my face. My hands were trembling. My heart was beating strongly. But I walked with my head held high, because I had just done something I never thought I would be capable of doing. I told my son the truth, and I survived. I took the bus back home. I sat by the window and watched the city pass by, and I realized something beautiful. For the first time in 69 years, my life was completely mine. I arrived home and called Barbara. How was it? She asked immediately. Liberating, painful, but liberating. What happened? I told her everything. Every word, every moment. When I finished, she said, I am so proud of you, Eleanor. Thank you. I am proud of myself, too. That night, I sat in my garden. I looked at the flowers I had planted months ago. They were blooming, and I thought about everything I had lost, about the years I gave without receiving anything in return, about the relationship with my grandkids that I would probably never recover, about the son I thought I had but who never really existed. It hurt. It still hurt. But I had also gained something invaluable. I had gained myself back. I had recovered my dignity, my time, my peace, my life, and that was worth more than any relationship based on exploitation and manipulation. The following months, I never heard from Mason again. He didn't call, he didn't write, he didn't appear. He disappeared from the map, exactly as I said would happen in that first sentence I sent him. And I kept living. I kept painting. I kept doing yoga. I kept taking care of my garden. I kept strengthening real friendships. I kept existing for myself. 1 year after that meeting at the coffee shop, I was sitting in my living room, reading a book, when the doorbell rang. I opened the door. It was one of my grandsons, the oldest. He was 14 now. Hi, Grandma. My heart stopped. Hi, my love. What are you doing here? I came to see you. Alone. Dad doesn't know I'm here. I let him in. I made him hot chocolate. We sat on the sofa. Why did you come? I asked gently. Because Dad always talks bad about you. He says you abandoned us, that you are selfish. But I remembered you differently. I remembered that you were kind, that you always took care of us. So I looked up your address and came. Tears fell down my cheeks. Your dad is right about something. I left you, but not because I didn't love you. I left because your dad was using me and I needed to save myself. I know. I heard Mom and Dad talking once. I heard that you gave them a lot of money, that you cleaned our house, and I never saw you receive anything in return. I was speechless. I'm not mad at you, Grandma. I'm mad at Dad, because he treated you badly, and because he lied to us about you. I hugged him. And I cried. I cried from pain, from joy, from relief. I love you, I told him. I always loved you. You and your brother. I love you too, Grandma. I don't know what will happen in the future. I don't know if Mason will someday understand the damage he did. I don't know if I will be able to have a relationship with my grandkids. But I know this. I did the right thing by choosing myself. And if I had to do it again, I would do it exactly the same. Because my life has value. And finally, after 69 years, I learned to live as if it did.